You are listening to the Light Overtime podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. Good morning. Happy Easter.
Good morning. Happy Easter to you. How you doing?
Not too bad. Crashing at Evans this weekend. Finally got a little rest and relaxation. Not too bad. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking just about the worst latte I've ever made in my life, and I don't even want to take a sip because it's going to disgust me on camera, but I'll do it. Yeah. I've been getting into oat milk, which I've made some great oat milk lattes, but I also used like some really, like the Onyx coffee I bought like 2 months ago now it ain't working anymore. So it ain't very good anymore.
Right on.
Yeah.
I got a bag of Hyperion last weekend, and
How was that?
Because I'm at Evans, I have the Francis and Francis, and I have a Chemex, so I've been making red eyes like all the time. The Hyperion's really good, man. I'm impressed. It's a Honduras. Everybody knows, if they know me, that's my favorite place to get coffee for some reason. Every one that I've had so far kind of hits. But this one's, I haven't really been able to back off like the sourness, but I would say from these shots, it's not like a bad sour. There's just kind of a lot going on. And for some reason, I decided I don't really do red eyes ever. I mainly make lattes or pour over, and I made a red eye, and it was just the best of both worlds. Like the sourness was gone, but all the flavor I got from the espresso was in the coffee, and anything that I lacked in my bad form on making a Chemex was completely fixed by the espresso. So it's quite good.
Nice.
Now I just have a big chunker. It's like
Yeah.
a 500 mil red eye, which is danger.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a Honduras I didn't like either. Good origin.
Yeah, it's like a weird sleeper origin. I don't think people talk about it a lot, but
Yeah.
I've been pretty happy with them. But yeah, what have you been shooting this week?
Literally nothing. Today I picked up the camera to do a reel for the coffee stuff, which I liked, but I realized when I picked it up today that it hadn't moved since we last spoke. I got sick, so I was literally right after we recorded, I like started having a runny nose and my throat was starting to hurt. Like, I was exporting the video, send it off to you. And I'm like not feeling right. When I was like asking you like questions, like, is this how I've always is this the resolution? All that stuff. I was starting to get sick, and like the next 2-3 days, I was just totally under the weather. I took a couple COVID tests, and it wasn't that, but I was definitely feeling super foggy. But I'm good now. Yesterday it was feeling 100%, and just had to take that week off basically.
That is a bummer. I don't know that I'm sick, but the last 2 weeks maybe I have like constant chills throughout the day, and like my body kind of aches and feels funny in my ribs, like on the sides. Never experienced this, but it's like prolonged now, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm dying.
Could be a weather thing, man. We've had a lot of swings lately in the weather.
Yeah, pretty wild. Well, in your sick trials, did you happen to watch any content that's worth sharing?
Not really. And I caught up on all that Thomas Heaton stuff, and which was like the worst timing because I was so inspired and motivated to go and do that stuff. Then I got sick and I wasn't ever going to do it. And we had like crazy weather, and that's like the prime time for me to feel like going out. And I was super close. I was still like in the middle of it, feeling sick. I'm like, I think I could just, pack up, get in the car, go down to the lighthouse and just, maybe. But I know if I even tried to shoot from the car, I'd be like, no, this angle sucks. I'm gonna get out of the car and go, brave it. And I would have just made things worse. So I didn't watch any more content. I just, fell right off and didn't get back on yet.
Fair enough. Yeah, it'd be like that. I realized this week that DP Review did a knocked review, and man, is like slightly good CA performance and like decent sharpness at 0.95 worth $8,000.
I remember watching some videos when that first released, but I couldn't tell you any of the reviews other than knowing the fact that it ain't worth it for anyone, basically. It's a showpiece.
Yeah, that video in particular is worth watching if you like really cheesy jokes, because
I probably watched it.
Yeah, I mean it came out like 8 days ago or whatever. But
Oh, that's a newer one.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like they did like a
Oh.
new Noct video,
Okay, I'll have to
and
watch that.
yeah, and the amount of like Noct puns in that video is enough to like murder you if you hate puns. Like
Yeah.
you either really into how stupid this video is, or you're like really really gonna hate it.
Well, they have
But
the long running joke of like relative to a Noct, how big or how heavy a lens is,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, and they finally get to say it is exactly one Noct, and they
Yeah.
reference that they'd been waiting forever to tell that joke and
That's
stuff.
fantastic.
But yeah, it was decent. And with that, we also heard this week that Deep Your Review is getting archived, which is the bare minimum I needed to happen to
Yeah.
have faith in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's good. I'm happy to see that that's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. We have a huge archive and a wealth of resource that will remain in our hands.
That is good. There is an incredible amount of information, and so much of the information that is there that could have been posted a decade ago will remain relevant for photography. It doesn't have to be stuff about new gear. It doesn't have to be rumor stuff. There's absolutely a ton of material on there for anybody who's just starting photography now. You can dig back 15 years in that thing and find something that's relevant to you. So that's good.
Yeah, it's stellar. I'm pretty stoked about that. That, some like underground randos don't have to spend the rest of the year trying to like, or I guess the rest of the month really, like trying to archive the heck out of it. So
Yeah.
always cool stuff. Again, another light show. I guess I didn't mention. I haven't shot too terribly much this week. We did have a firearms course for law enforcement that I did photos and stuff for, and that's kind of an interesting thing. It's really difficult to kind of make images more than just like snapshots when you're trying to do those kinds of events. There's very little storytelling, so I was trying to take it upon myself to try to get like, how can I take something that's basically flat, a bunch of people on like an indoor range, and like try to explore different compositions and things like that. And it was hard. I felt kind of like a bad photographer for like the first hour.
You
But
know
then I
what,
just
though? Sorry to
what?
sidetrack you, but I absolutely love when I run into moments where I feel like a bad photographer. Those are the moments where you like got to figure some shit out and grow real fast.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely like good, right? Because you want to learn, and you don't learn unless you're in those environments. But um, I was like, man, what the heck am I doing wrong? Like I
Yeah.
don't know. And just walking around, and it's kind of weird because obviously you have like 20 like law enforcement officers that are trying to do their thing, and I'm not incognito anywhere I am because I'm so tall, and just like behind these dudes while they're trying to like shoot and learn and do all this other stuff. And yeah, I was trying to like find ways to use the students to frame the instructors, which are, my coworker and our buddy Ben. And yeah, it was challenging. I need to get back out and shoot like people doing stuff because it's making me realize that it's been a while. And there's a lot to do. Like I like products and I like other things, but it's hard to make compelling people photos that don't just look like snapshots.
Yeah. And I imagine in your industry that can be a really tough thing because, especially with that kind of event, just putting an image out there with hardly any context could be on its own just polarizing depending on who sees the picture, right?
Yeah.
Without any storytelling tools. How are these presented? Are they for socials with captions, or where are they going? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, there are some for social, some for archival purposes, some for like marketing these courses because the guy that we've kind of partnered up with to do class is really passionate about like properly training people to be at the highest level if that's what their career field is going to be, and it's super important. And it's something, frankly, that doesn't get enough attention because I think there are a lot of guys out doing that, and that's super important. Especially like I don't want our public safety to be like bad at a
Yeah.
rare but common enough part of their job where they can't perform. Like I legitimately on paper on a flat range shoot better than a lot of basic law enforcement guys because I have access to it and I do it
Yeah.
a lot, right?
Sure.
So it's like, wow, if I'm like far and away better than a lot of like law enforcement. That's kind of scary. Like they definitely need the resources to train more and be more competent as, you know, people who are, for a lot of the country, those are the people that are gonna like hopefully serve and protect most most people, right? So
Yeah.
it's pretty wild, but generally it's not completely without context. It's not just like Gucci stuff. It's like class.
Yeah.
It's very formal learning
Good.
and education stuff. So that's cool, but it's making it marketable images and making things look good and making sure it's a clean composition with, you know, just a basically a wad of like 25 people in a big box.
Yeah.
It's challenging. There's a lot of ways to basically just make flat people standing around images that are basically useless.
Yeah, I tend to feel that way sometimes when I'm doing work with my contact for the city, because we often do like lifestyle type of like shopping or experience type of shoots with models, and sometimes I really have to get creative about framing. And I'm often telling our models basically, I'm not here. Experience the thing. We're here. Like they bought your lunch, or they bought your wine, whatever. Do those things, and I'm not here. Let me just take these pictures because if I pose too much, it can feel really what's the word I'm looking for? Just clinical, you know. So
Yeah,
I try to, and this is true not just with models that I'm doing like marketing stuff for. This is true with like weddings and everything that involves people. For me, I love the candid feel because that often leads into the storytelling a little better when they're
sure.
actually having a genuine experience. I try to push them into that as much as possible. Be like, hey, just look at each other, talk to each other about each of your days, you know. When they can have those genuine experiences, it makes it a little bit easier on us. But in that type of event, you probably have less opportunity for that, I'd guess.
No, there's zero. I mean, it's full on event photography, right? But yeah, anyway, it was a challenge for the week, and there will be many more of those classes that'll probably be you know, shooting videos and photo of. So
Good.
I'll have more opportunity to figure it out and get better at it. But especially on an indoor range where I'm very limited by where I can be, it was challenging. I mean, it's probably 10 bays or something like that. So it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
35 yards wide. That's it. Concrete walls on either end. So like they were basically butted up from wall to wall. So I can't really get on their side even very easily. That's pretty wild.
Well, there's definitely a broader conversation we could have about being thrown into the fire and having to learn, especially if you're listening to this and you just picked up a camera like this year or last year and you've only got a couple of cheap lenses, maybe they're just the lenses that came with the camera, and you're wondering, how do I get into paid gigs? You really have to find some people to talk with that you can show your work to, that you can get feedback from, because waiting on feedback from clients can be unfruitful. It can be painful sometimes when you're first starting out, because your work just isn't going to be what it's going to be like in 10 years. Let me put it that way. So like you're saying here, when you're put in a position where you have to do things differently than you're used to, or when you're brand new and you don't know what to expect out of a certain situation, sometimes you just got to go through the hard stuff, get the work done, and then come back to it after the fact and learn from those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's I often have situations like this at this job where it's like, hey, here's an address. We need you to show up and we're going to capture some stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool. I don't know the space I'm in. I don't know the people I'm shooting. I don't know
Yeah.
like I'm just, you're the guy that does the media and we have a class or we have a, like a showroom type thing or we have this or that. And it's like, see you then.
Yeah,
And that's
can you tell me about any kind of preparation you might have done for this specific gig?
Um, I knew that I was gonna kind of have to just be on the seat of my pants, so I grabbed the 28 to 70 from work. But obviously, I shoot at ranges a lot, so I had a lot of like preconceptions of what I wanted to shoot, but I didn't really know how tight the indoor range was. So, you know, how do you shoot images of people where you mostly have access to the back of their head?
Mm,
Right. And you got to kind of finagle around and try to get like somewhat decent images. I didn't get a lot of great student images, but you know, during some moments of instruction where they'd kind of loop around and circle around Ben or whatever, I got a couple of pretty good images of that. I got some good images of like some one-on-one conversations where they're like clearly instructing and you can kind of tell that like Zach or Ben is like working with a student and So some of those were some of my favorite photos, and then just some like actual like fire demonstrations and stuff like that was easier to do when it's just one person on the run. But yeah, it's there's not a whole lot of preparation you can do other than um I guess I go, well, what is the actual goal?
Hmm.
Because they didn't have one for me. They just wanted me to go photograph some things. And for me, it was like, how do I take a collection of images that kind of explain what it looks like and feels like to be at a class? I wanted it to look professional because I wanted some of this stuff to be used for Ben's social media to promote our classes. Um, Potential flyers because I usually use one big blank image, um, or I guess like a full bleed image for all of the flyers. Um, so I'm always looking for a part of demonstration or something like that that's relatively clean in its composition, where there's not too many like differing faces or there's some negative space, and it's like you can add text. So I'm always shooting for usually a little wider than I need to because plus 30 megapixels is pretty solid for digital flyers. None of those flyers get printed or anything; they're just for
Hmm.
social and things. So at that point, I know I can crop in a whole bunch if I need to, so I can leave them pretty wide. Always trying to, I guess that would be like editorial mentality, right? Is that I need to think about it as full bleed for text, and that's where it's going to be used. So
Hmm.
I just kind of keep that in mind while I'm shooting. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of preparation that you can handle when you don't know the location and
Yeah.
you don't even know the class size, because I didn't know there was 20 guys. It could have been
Right.
10. It could have been 40. So
Yeah, there's definitely some situations where you have no choice other than to react as best and professionally as you can, especially when you're talking about using, thinking about framing for text overlays and things. You've got to think about all the negative space outside of exactly what your focal point is, because there can be a lot of images that you could take and be really happy with, and come back later and try to put text on them and just be really unhappy with how that text is placed. And you can do other things to make it work, but if you can think about that really critically on site, you can come back and be a lot more effective about that. That's for sure.
yeah. Uh, I'll say if you're trying to produce images for marketing in general, whether it be, for, my first real marketing gig as an intern at the public library, I try to always think of how could these be used? Not just how they're going to be used, but how could they be used? Because, at the library, for instance, we had such a small team. We had one primary graphic designer. And then at one point while I was there, we got a graphic design intern, but then we had the marketing manager and then me kind of. That was kind of the basis of the team. And I got to know that, okay, well, if Farrell or Chafe need to use these in a certain way, then like I need to make sure that they could use it as a full bleed, or it's still tight enough that it can be cropped for how we post things, and be just a single image where they're going to have text to the side. Or if it's going to go in a pamphlet, or because we did everything. We did a ton of physical media, we did a
Hmm.
ton of digital media. It was always trying to keep that in mind while I was shooting. If I really liked a particular composition, I would make sure that I have it really tight, really wide, vertical and horizontal almost every time.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I try to do when I have the ability, right? A lot of our speakers would be relatively stationary, so I always kind of had a second chance to get a shot if I really liked what I did. Um, but yeah, final format is a good place to start if you just don't know how and what you need to shoot. If you start there, you're going to get workable shots at least.
Yeah, that's a great point. Way back in the day, I used to do marketing work. I was an intern and part-time employee for a while for EJ, the formerly known as East Jordan Ironworks, and we did marketing, but it was a manufacturing company for manhole covers, fire hydrants, things like that. And my job often entailed graphic design work. But as I started to pick up a camera in, like halfway through my time there, it was pretty clear to me that when I went out, it was often with a wider angle lens with these cameras. And I didn't know much at the time, but I knew enough because of the graphic design work I'd been doing for a couple of years to think like that, to think, okay, if I go out with this camera, let's say into the plant to try to capture images of some guys pouring some stuff or doing some sanding or whatever, that I have to think, where could these images not go? Not where is this particular image going to go this time? Because those images get archived and they often get reused. They'll get cropped in different ways. They'll get put in different places on brochures, on anything, basically. We worked and did a lot of stuff with physical media as well. Actually, we did very little digital because this was back in 2009 through 2015. And for a manufacturing company, we did have a YouTube channel. And if you go out and find EJ's YouTube channel, you might find some old videos that I worked on. But I'm not going to tell you which ones those are. But yes, you have to think very critically about the broader sense of how could these images be used. And that's not applicable only to event photography, but like weddings and a lot of things. As a photographer, you have to market yourself too. And there's different ways that you can use these images, not just throw them up and then put a caption where the caption goes, but using text to advertise is very effective sometimes. So yeah, definitely got to be thinking about these things.
Yeah, always. I mean, I still revisit posts regularly, and old images from when I started in 2020 at my current job before I had left and come back or whatever. And yeah, I mean, just because you used an image and you shot an image doesn't mean that its life is over and that is used for a magazine or something and then that's it. Unless obviously they have paid for full rights or whatever to the image,
Right.
then I guess you can't do anything. But if it's just still in your own little pool of images, yeah, revisit that stuff, reuse that stuff, archive it in a way that it can be useful to you as long as it could until it sucks, and then use it to show your progress to yourself and feel better.
There you go. There's always a use. Exactly.
I love going back to like 2015, 2016, 2017 and re-editing my raw files and being like, man, I sucked at I sucked at editing. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I've kept some raw files from as far back as about that same time, 2014, 2015, and I have re-edited some of those, especially Astro, man. When I first started doing Astro, and thankfully I kept a lot of those raws, man, I was pushing things so hard, thinking, and like noise reduction too, pushing that so hard, making things so muddy, thinking it has to be cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. It took me years to finally accept higher ISO noise just being natural. Like it just is what it is. And you give up a ton of sharpness. You give up a ton of character when you try to clean things up after the fact. Man, things I wish I could have known at the time, because I don't have a lot of raws from the early days too, that I know I really pushed a lot of images too far.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way, right? So, a lot of younger, newer photographers, not even just younger, right, but newer photographers are most like the smallest screens, 1080p. Most people have like these really high pixel density monitors, but imagine you're looking at some professionals' astrophotography in 2013 on like a 1366 by 768 monitor, and you're like, how is it so clean? And you can't even open it enough because like it's on, it's protected somehow on a website, and you're looking at these beautiful images and you're like, dude, it's so freaking clean. And it's just because it's so big that like 768 by 1366 is tiny. It's like
you just made me realize for the first time really that I started photography before most people had a smartphone.
Yeah.
Which is like, I had to have had a different mentality because that didn't exist yet, to like put my work on a phone and everyone's going to see it from their phone. Like back in 2011, 2012, that was like the first or second iPhone generation, right? Something like that. 2000, I think I had an iPhone 3 in 2012. So it was like just getting there, but like I don't think Instagram was on Android yet at the time. I don't think there was a lot of people who were not looking to their phones for content consumption yet.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. Well,
and think about this. So like we're uploading to early Facebook or even MySpace, because I was still using a DSLR before I considered myself a photographer, right? My mom had one for ages, since like 2001. So I had been using, or 2003? I'd been using a DSLR forever. I thought they were cool. I used to love doing slow shutter, just bulb stuff with lights all the time. And, you make these super cool images and you make them super punchy and all this stuff. But it's like they were like 640 pixels wide. And the camera was capable of making like a much larger image, but they just got crushed. Like, think about how Facebook crushes stuff now. We weren't
Yeah.
even considering that when we were like youthful, sprightly young photographers. So
Yeah.
we're like pixel peeping on one end where it literally made no difference on the viewer end because the internet didn't have the bandwidth it
Right.
does now.
And the output
Like,
wasn't too far different from the source.
yeah,
We have much better
um,
equipment now.
yeah, it's
It
crazy.
gets
Well,
ripped apart.
even then, I think it was probably still getting ripped apart, dude. But
I'm sure
the
it was. Yeah.
the output was such that like the screen resolution was so low,
Yeah.
so like it didn't really matter because
We
we
were not
couldn't see
looking
it.
at OLED screens with inky blacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
native, it's still gonna, even if it was 800 by 600, right? If it compressed something that was like even 20 or 16 megapixels down to 800 by 600 pixels, you probably didn't know because your laptop screen, your giant gross OG laptop, or your still CRT desktop, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
So like it's just crunchy and whatever. But I think that's why we also liked the super crunchy stuff.
Yeah,
Why it
you're
was
probably
super high
right.
contrast,
We
dude.
had to make it that way to make that impact.
Yeah, so people look at images from 15 years ago and they're like, "What in earth were you thinking?" It's like, well, you're looking at it on a 1440p display now
Yeah.
that has like, however many more bits of data and like however many more colors exist on this like monitor.
Right.
It's wild to think about it like that.
It sure is, man. Man, when I started, there was just, you're right. I definitely was pushing things, contrast so far up, vibrancy and saturation up because, like you say, we didn't have the screens, the displays we do now. And even though they're small, we're still looking at everything small. We get a lot of detail on these screens now. And
Yeah.
the more you do to the image nowadays, the more you see every little artifact that comes with pushing an image too far.
Yeah, you hand me this like razor blade stealth that I'm using, this 14-inch like 1080p display. My senior year of high school, I would lose my mind.
Oh, yeah.
This would be the gnarliest thing I could have ever completely fathomed from,
Absolutely.
a computer. And I was nerdy, man. I had some pretty good stuff. Like I was building computers 10 years before that and all that stuff. So like I got it, but this would still blow my freaking mind, dude.
Oh, yeah.
That's before Linus Tech Tips, dude. Think about that.
That's a long time.
Yeah, right. So it's crazy. I could probably talk about that forever, but
Yeah, no doubt.
a good segue actually is the original main topic I had in mind today was this Petapixel article, and the headline got me because it's stupid. Um, Gen Z discovers modern digital cameras are better than iPhones. And I was like, okay,
I saw that headline.
I was like, what's this stupid article about? And I'm looking at it, and it's a legit TikTok trend. And it's like all these girls on beaches.
So this
like
isn't a
backlit.
joke. Like these kids are like finding out.
This is for real, bro.
Oh.
This is like a bunch of people.
Can you
like,
blame them? With
no,
marketing?
I can, because it gets worse.
Okay, all right, tell me. Let's hear it.
iPhone photo, girl on a beach, backlit by a sunset. Obviously a challenging photo unless you have ultra crazy HDR stuff. And then an iPhone is going to do all of its computation to make everything as flat as possible, because that's basically what the computation does for an iPhone. It's like, how do I get everything perfectly exposed?
Mm-hmm.
And then equally not as good digital camera photos that are like hard front flash.
Yeah.
And they're like, look how much better it is. All right,
boy.
I don't want to like.
What specific aspects did they think was better? Can you tell me that?
They're just like 7-second TikToks where it's like you see literally this iPhone photo and it's fine. It's not like it's a horrible image or anything like that. Like,
right, I'm saying like a new iPhone can do a decent job at that.
It's doing fine, but it's really flat.
Sure.
I literally think what they're experiencing is just black levels and white levels and things that are like have contrast and aren't like HDR and just
Mm,
all the same exposure. Like,
mm,
because these images aren't good. They don't really look better. A lot of them are hard flash, like I was talking about a few episodes ago. It's like trendy to do the party, like early
yeah,
2000s
sure.
point and shoot flash. So it's a bunch of that. But like, I think they just realized like a lot of these computational images are super flat. Just seeing details not what you want from an image. If just
Right.
everything is perfectly like detailed and you see everything, it's just like a snapshot of the existence around you. There's not mood to it. They're like so for me it's a bit of a weird thing because I don't think they're realizing digital modern cameras are better. You can do this with an iPhone. They're realizing that like just purely computational things, clinicalness, for lack of a better term, just like this worked is boring. And like this is why you use tools to make images.
Do you think people who are not photographers, who are taking lots of photos with their iPhones, who have no idea that a camera, like a DSLR, mirrorless, or whatever, can produce much better results, or just have the faint idea but don't know why? Do you think these people edit all their photos that they like? Do you think they're pushing colors different ways and pushing contrast up, or do you think I bought this new iPhone and it's going to take great photos, and they get these super flat photos that are supposedly what should look good, and they just post because that's like what they should look like? Because
I
if
don't
they're
think
discovering, oh, there's a bunch of contrast or colors or something in the modern camera that my iPhone is not producing because the iPhone's making super gray photos, do you think people just don't push them? They don't edit them?
I don't know that that's true because I think especially, you know, I do have a window into like young women because I worked at a girls summer camp, right? And you see what they're doing and they understand like some editing stuff. A
Beyond
lot of
just swiping
yeah,
filters.
a lot of like Gen Z girls I know, they're using like Visco to edit their photos and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
that's been a thing. Yeah.
Like yeah, for a long time, and they run all of their stuff through at least some sort of filter and stuff like that. So like I don't think they just assume that their camera will produce a good image, but like for me, I can't use the like base like full auto iPhone camera. I think it's horrible. Like literally nothing looks good. I have to use Lightroom and at least have some control over what I'm doing, or else I think most of the images look like garbage.
I agree with you. However, if I could play devil's advocate for a second, this
Yeah.
person who takes this super flat photo next to this other camera, the other camera is also going to produce a relatively flat photo unless it's in JPEG with a picture profile or whatever. However, the iPhone, man, I have to imagine that if they just edit it, because the iPhone's going to capture a bunch of data, usually with like HDR modes and whatever to make things gray. It's going to have all that data. If they push it, build the contrast like a photographer might, but even somebody who's not just knows how to use Snapseed or something. If they're not using like Snapseed, maybe if they're just, I don't know, using like Instagram's built-in stuff, even with that, you can push contrast and colors to a point where it's not flat anymore, right?
I don't think it is that easy. I struggle to make like iPhone photos just kind of look like good, like closer to what I can do with Lightroom. So I'm not sure, but
Okay.
also I have a slight theory that because an iPhone can't do the party flash thing, and I said that in that episode we talked about it. I said like if that's going to be a trend, people are going to realize like the flash on a cell phone does not look very good. It's not going to give you the same like contrast. It always kind of blows out a little bit and looks a little janky.
Yeah.
And it's just not
And
the
by
right
design,
type.
that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And you know, you could give me a power shot from like 2008, brother, and I bet I could get some sick party images with that thing. Like,
Yeah, man. This is coming back to a short conversation I just had before we started recording here that I found somebody posted that they saw on a YouTube video. This content creator said the cliche they said they had a $3,700 camera with like a $2,000 lens on it, and they hate when they hear from these people that gear doesn't matter. And that's been in my head. I was thinking about trying to bring this up, and I think this relates because like you said, you can grab a power shot and like fit into this trend, but it's like the context is important, the intention, knowing what you're doing with the tools. If you have the ability to take something that has the capability to get the work done, it's your experience that counts for just about everything, and knowing how to use the tools. So, having a really nice camera, or I mean, she's the iPhones these days are probably creeping up on like $1,500 or something, right? Like that's not cheap at all.
Right.
But if that $1,500 iPhone can't produce the image that a PowerShot can, man, that really just proves the point. Like you can take a great image with just about anything as long as you know what you're doing. And you could probably try your best to emulate that on an iPhone, but you're going to need some like off-camera flash or something to help. I don't even know if that's possible.
Yeah, well, I think I was thinking about that earlier actually, because I definitely have seen like they did that magazine cover with like The Rock a few years ago, and they used a cell phone for it and stuff, and they had lights and stuff. So I don't know exactly how that works, but you're gonna need other tools to truly make iPhone photography and videography look really good.
Yeah.
And you're getting to the point where like now you're really like I hate when you see some kind of YouTuber person that does like client work, and they're like, there's a lot more people asking for like natural looking cell phone stuff, and then they rig out an iPhone and they have like, aperture lights that are like $1,200 a pop, and it's like, yes. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just using the tool though. Like it'll never just be about what camera you have and things like that. I can still make a Panasonic G7 work. Like it's all of that doesn't matter. It's just so much perspective, because I got a lot of small ideas popping into my head right now. But how many people still say, well, your camera takes really nice images? Because there is something to it. If you give me a freaking 7D and like a 50 mil, and then you give me my freaking A7 IV with an 85 mil, it'll be roughly the same focal length, minus 10, millimeters. I'm gonna absolutely slam with the A7 IV over the freaking 7D in a 50 mil. Like I'm just gonna take better stuff. It's gonna be really good. It's gonna have better ISO performance. It's going to have better AF. I'm going to have way more keepers. Like that really does matter. But it doesn't mean anything, because if a little bit of work and trial and things, I can pull out what I need from a 70 with a 50 mil. So it's never one thing.
Yeah.
It's always nuanced. It's never black and white. Like
you're absolutely
annoying.
Right. It's a spectrum. It's all about context. Like you're absolutely right. You now, given both of those tools, the images are going to be different. But let's like twist that up a little bit and say like 10 years ago, you gets the A7 IV and now you gets the old stuff. Like then what happens? Then now you is still going to take better photos. I promise you.
But I'm still going to get more keepers from the A7 IV, period. Because
I don't know that's true.
It is. It absolutely is true.
It depends on the situation.
I'm thinking just like an event, running
if you
portraits.
Need reliable autofocus, that's going to be true.
That's what I mean. There's a bunch of technology in there that's going to be way better.
But see, you're talking to a landscape photographer who's often in manual focus on a tripod, which is a totally different scenario.
I shoot almost everything, right? I love shooting dogs. I guarantee you I'm not getting good dog photos like I am on an A7 IV 8 years ago. I would get like one keeper out of like 500 images because the autofocus is just garbage. Like it's super challenging.
I'll give you that. The autofocus is a big deal that's made a lot of progress.
Even if you're trying to have like aperture, like a really wide open aperture, shooting a model in like really well lit areas, you're going to get more keepers on a fast lens with modern autofocus. Colors are going to have better depth. They just are. Because we're talking about a 7D and an A7 IV still, right? Like the technology in that entire camera is genuinely better. The files are better. They're higher megapixel. Like, so like the gear does matter.
To say you're going to get better keepers, that might be true, especially with the autofocus helping you out. But I'm going to hold true. I'm going to believe that the now Korey would get the best picture from the set. It's just going to be that way. You've got 10 years of experience of learning what you've learned, like you've grown to know how to take these pictures and know what to look for. I have to believe the
My
experience
intu
counts for a lot more than I think we think.
my intuition still tells me that the very hungry, highly creative me from the past with a really nice, crazy space camera versus me who's complacent and maybe more experienced with an older camera, I think that young me is still going to crush me because there's a whole lot to do with how hungry I was when I was like growing daily at photography. And I think with tools and a fresh mind, I think I would be a lot more creative, like a lot, like leagues more creative in my early days of photography than now. For sure. This is totally on a tangent now. We're like so
No, I
far
like
away
this.
from the
This is where
topic.
I'm at. I'm living in it.
But in this hypothetical, like I'm not hungry at all anymore. I'm just out here making money. Like so I will still maintain that
Man, I wish we were closer because I would just like pull you out of the house and just go do some shit. Cause I gotta find that in you. We gotta get together a little bit here.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how susceptible I would be to like wanting to get competitive or like I don't know how
Oh
I
no,
would
no,
vote
no,
it.
no.
No,
You
no,
don't have
no.
to be
Like
competitive.
no, but something. I'm a competitive person. I don't know. I don't know what it would take to get me in that space again, because I don't know how competitive I could get about photography again. Because I don't care what people think. I like to make what I like to make. And back when I wanted to prove myself and I was hungry, I don't know that I can replicate that creativity.
Because it was external, right? There was something else you wanted to
Well, there's a
obtain.
little. It was all of it. It was like I was super competitive with myself, but I also wanted to prove that I was like good. And
Yeah.
10 years of imposter syndrome and all this other stuff got me to the point where you're almost like a nihilist, where you're like, well, I make what I make and I like it, and like technically speaking, I'm above average. So like I know I'm a good photographer. It's fine. I'm not the best. I never will be the best because I'm not hungry and after it like that. But for the stuff I need to do, I'm very good at what I do.
Hmm.
So like that complacency, it's more of this just such a tool. And I like cool images for me because I don't even think I work on my own images that much anymore. Like
Yeah.
hard.
See,
Like I
that's.
did, like I did 10 years ago.
I think we live in two different headspaces as far as like the recreational photography we're doing, because obviously we both do professional work that requires just head down, focus, get the work done. It's going to look the way it's going to look. It's going to look the way the client expected it to look.
Yeah.
But then once a week or twice a week, I go out and do wildlife, landscape, astro, and just enjoy the time. And like that's more important to me than the images. And that's not always been the case. When I first started for the first couple of years, I think the images meant more to me than the time. And I definitely remember some times kicking myself, feeling regret for having gone out because I didn't get anything good. I don't know what, I don't know, man. Nowadays, it's just having a wonderful time. I don't know if that's something that you do now, like every once in a while, but I try to give myself like an hour or two, like go find a sunrise and just, it doesn't even have to be about that, but just like, it doesn't have to be landscapes. It doesn't have to be any one thing, but sometimes I just
Right.
take the
Yeah.
camera and just go walk around.
I'm trying to chew over my relationship with photography now. Because I don't know I shoot all the time. So it is just like an extension of my person.
Hmm.
Like I take images every single day. There's not a single day I can remember in recent memory where I didn't take at least one image, right? So, and that's for real. I literally shoot photos every single day.
And I think there's absolutely something great about that. But I also think that my relationship with the recreational side of my photography right now, which I still consider professional because there's professional applications for it. There's something really refreshing, relaxing, resetting. It's good for my soul, I often say. I don't know. Do you have that relationship at all?
I don't think that's a thing for me. I don't.
This is where we separate.
Yeah, I don't just shoot for the act of shooting. It's always to capture something for some reason. And I mean, again, marketer, right? Like my profession is marketing, it's not photography, right? So um, I'm always thinking about the ends of an image. Like, what was this for? If it's even for social, if it's for like traveling and stuff. Like, I think travel photography is one of the few places where like I'm definitely still thinking of the images for an audience. They're not just
Oh
like
wow.
this is my like memories of a trip because I don't really shoot memory photos. I
I
don't
wouldn't call
normally.
it that for me either, though.
Yeah, but I mean, some people. I have some photography friends who will at least bust their camera out when they're doing something cool with their friends or
Oh,
whatever,
okay, a
just to have.
social thing, sure,
I
yeah.
almost never do that. Like
Mm.
it's always something. It's always some type of photography, and it's not necessarily because I want to do the photography. It's for whatever the end is.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I think nowadays I'll go out and let's say I go to the river and spend 4 hours taking let's say 1,000 pictures. You'd think a photographer who's got 10 plus years of experience, who's done wildlife for a lot of those years, having spent 4 hours that day would like go home and say to their wife or whoever, yeah, I got a ton of great images. Most times, like I'm like leaving there smiling, going, I don't think I got anything good, but I just had a really great time. And then, I happen to get like a couple great shots or whatever, feel really good about it after the fact. But I'm not like chewing through these photos on the back of the screen going, oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. I think that's going to be great. I'm not doing that. I'm just like taking the
No. Yeah.
pictures, barely looking, just really having a great time with just being out there or whatever it is. And then later on, I'll be like, oh, yeah, that was good. And that's where I think like the experience and the built up skill, I don't get like crazy excited about it anymore like I used to. And that's where like the creativity was in the early days, like you said, like hungry for validation. The creativity drove so much of like my like nonstop shooting because I was at that point at one time. And now it's like this shift where like the experience and the skill now allow me to take some keepers more often without having to do it every day. And like I'm cool with that. I don't know. I feel good about it.
Right on. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll have to keep evaluating what I'm trying to get from photography because I think my brain has exploded at this point that maybe it's not what I think it is. Maybe I hate
Well,
photography.
what can you let's summarize, let's say for the past a couple months, what different like way different genres of photography have you done?
Oh man. So obviously the thread through everything is dogs. I did
Sure.
some family stuff recently. We took Cody's kid out to the park and stuff, and I was snapping images of him and whatnot. Product photography, event photography. Um, I've done a little bit of landscapey stuff, but it's normally just like trying to play with colors and making presets when I'm doing landscape. I don't really care for landscape. Well, we live in Michigan, so like you live closer to the parts of Michigan that are beautiful.
That's true.
Until down here, there's not a whole lot going on. So
I'll
like
give you that. Yeah, I
it's
probably would be
challenging.
less excited about it.
Yeah, there's just not a whole lot of very interesting stuff like close to Kazoo. Like if you go, to the lake and stuff west and all that, it can get kind of cool. But there's not a whole lot out here that's super exciting. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably most of it. I mean, I guess a couple of months before that, December, I got back from the Philippines. So
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't have a whole
I
lot.
guess
And there, I shot like every type of photography. But
yeah, and that's probably where I think personally I was most excited to see what variety you were going to get day to day because now I know like what you're working with and I know generally kind of like what you might be into within like the week space or whatever when since we talked. But when you were in the Philippines, like it was like what the heck's he going to see today? And I was
yeah,
so on the edge of my seat like keeping
yeah.
up with your stories and stuff. So I'm just wondering if there's anything you can do to kind of emulate that feeling sometimes, not like an everyday thing, but like, can you put yourself in a position where you just have no idea what you're going to run into? And maybe that'll spark something every once in a while. I don't know.
I could move to Japan.
There you go. That might do it. You know,
I love shooting in Japan. Everything looks cool.
who
Everything's aesthetic
wouldn't?
as hell. For my stupid little Western eyes.
I don't know, just something to think about, right?
Yeah, no, always, right? Like there's so many little things I'd like to be doing with life that like right now not having my own place to live is kind of taking press. Like I'm fighting so regularly just to like keep all my things together when I'm not grounded. I think it'll change a little bit when I'm kind of settled into my spot, hopefully very
Yeah,
soon.
cool.
Um, but like I don't have a lot of time to just like bop around and do stuff or like honestly even
Sure, that can be
do
part of it. Yeah.
yeah, do photography, even like product stuff or like gear stuff at the house because I just have a little bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
even yesterday, I took some photos of this new amp I picked up, and I'm at Evans, so I have access to the whole house. I'm able to like shoot in a big open area with like windows and stuff. I'm living in a basement like bedroom right now at the crib, so it's like all of my stuff is packed into a 10 by 10 box. Um, so yeah, interesting conversations about how to try to motivate, trying to figure out what you actually are trying to take from photography and whatnot.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can get out of the like monetize my life like version of creating content because that's
Mm.
kind of obviously the freelance I guess that I was trying to acquire uh, that dies hard, right? Like it's going to be tough for me to get to the point where I'm not like when I make stuff, I gotta like build a portfolio or I gotta like
Yeah.
really push myself to make like better and better stuff. Um, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I'm not trying to tell you to like, I don't know, chill out or change what you do because obviously you're very good at what you do. But I don't know. I do feel. I don't. I definitely don't feel as creative as I once did, and that makes me sad to say that out loud. But I still feel excited about the images after I get back home and I'm like editing. I'm like, oh damn, look at that light. Look at the way this is working. Look at the texture on this or whatever. I don't know. I do still. I may not feel creative in the moment anymore. And maybe I should change something to make that more apparent again. Maybe I should try to be more creative in the moment again and see what happens. Now I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's like the self motivation is way harder for me than extrinsic motivation. And I just don't have a whole lot of extrinsic motivation anymore, mainly because like places like Instagram and everything, like nobody cares, which is fine. Like I'm not worried about like that nobody cares or anything. But if I don't really have an audience, I don't know that I care so much about the images just for myself. Unless it's like my traveling images and stuff, where like I look back at my Japan 2019 photos all the time. I printed off a book for Evan and I after that trip, and like that's awesome. But yeah, I don't know.
Here's an idea. You can say no, but then you're saying no to this on the podcast. So I used to do this challenge with a buddy of mine years ago, where every week one of us, it was just the two of us, one of us would suggest a topic, a genre of photography. We'd both have to shoot that thing, and all we did was share it with each other. There was no mine's better, yours better. It was just like, here's what I took, here's what I like. Let me see what you got, type of thing. If that's something you'd like to do, I would be more than happy to participate with you, and maybe we can share it on the YouTube or however, like, and make that a thing. And you can cut this out entirely if you just don't want to do it and you don't want people to listen to us having this conversation. But if you want to do this challenge, I would be totally down.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking and kind of brainstorming how I want to have a more interactive um, thing like that. I especially would like to see people just like share their own stuff. Um, I don't know yet if I want to commit to like a weekly thing.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But like, at the beginning of the month, we say like some kind of even an abstract
Mm-hmm.
kind of idea, and then whatever your interpretation of that idea is, like create an image that has, whatever the stipulations might be. But like, I'd like to challenge myself to be taking images that can stand alone and tell a little bit of a story, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to take me to, have the rest of my parts of my life kind of intact because they're
Yeah,
not
I
right
hear
now.
that. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd obviously want to revisit this one when I moved in and I'm kind of like on to the next step of the year. But yeah, I mean, always anything to get shooting, right? It's super important.
Yeah, I think I'm just feeling like motivated because like the weather's getting warmer, and I don't know, I'm feeling like getting back outside and doing more stuff. So yeah, when you get settled, let's revisit this topic and see if we can come up with something that kind of inspires us both on a somewhat regular basis.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. We'll see you next week. Happy Easter. Have a good week.
Bye, guys.